I want to piggyback on what the chairman was just asking there. We just had that field hearing, as you know, Chief Moore, up in Hayward, Wisconsin, in regards to access, and heard some very good stories. Currently, the Forest Service is decommissioning an average of 2,000 miles of road annually. Is that accurate?
I don't have that information available, but I wouldn't be surprised by it, sir.
Yeah, I think that number's, I mean, think about that. That's 2,000 miles annually that are being reduced for access. And to the chairman's point, that road sometimes that is built to high specifications, when it is removed at the cost to the contractor. So the contractor is having to reduce their bid as a result of having to pay for the cost of removing the road. So the federal treasury actually ends up with less money as a result of that. And so it goes back to what the chairman was saying, is that it just doesn't make sense to the public, and especially many of them don't know what I just shared with you in regards to the road removal. But when they hear it, you know, they just go, duh, why are we doing these things? And so I guess my question is, this is a growing problem in regards to access. Will you commit to working with us to bring more access to the public?
Mr. Chairman, I want to be able to work with you and all of our publics on access. You know, I also want you to be able to understand the challenges that we have too, because sometimes we can bring up individual pieces and it's just, you know, from a common sense standpoint, why are we doing this? So let me just share with you, though, as I look across the agency and what we're being asked to do, we're being asked to manage a road system of about 371,000 miles. And in that 371,000 miles of roads, we're only funded at about 25% to do that. I don't want to close roads, and yet I'm not funded to maintain the road system that we currently have. So it's a real dilemma for us in the Forest Service to be able to do that. And so I'm not surprised, I'm disappointed that we have some common sense kinds of things that we can't come to an agreement. And I want to work on those types of things.
I would just share with you that I think there are people locally that are willing to help in regards to this. I think there needs to be greater engagement in that regard, because that's what we heard at the hearing, is that there are people, including private individuals, that they are willing to help out in this process to be able to make this happen. The other thing is that some would say that the Forest Service is far too passive in pushing back against those who want to put the restrictions in place. In fact, some are in the Forest Service, which we have a broad range of ideologies, but that there's some that in the Forest Service that actually want to see greater restrictions. And that's where your leadership is valued so much, is to be able to cut through that where somebody's personal beliefs enter into public decision making.
But Mr. Chairman, can I ask you, let's take a look at that.
You want us to report the employees that aren't?
No. I want to be able to go out on that road that you're talking about, and let's see what's possible, talking with some of the publics there.
Okay. We will invite you up to meet my good friend, Senator Rob Staffsholt, and he'll give you a tour just as we had.
Great.
So, yeah, let's see if we can do that. And by the way, I want to thank your staff in Wisconsin was there, Director Youngblood, and we really appreciate that she attended that access hearing. So the 2025 budget requests $124 million for new land acquisitions. Is that a good idea with a backlog of maintenance?
Well, you know, here again, let's look at the specifics of what's been requested, because sometimes, you know, land acquisitions is for better access to the public lands. Sometimes it's for more efficient management. And so without knowing the specifics of a particular area, I would say there's different reasons for it.
Yeah, I think with the maintenance backlog that's going on, I mean, it should be a very high bar that we be adding to the federal estate at this point. When we hear that there's this whole maintenance backlog, how much more money do you need?
Well, if you doubled our budget right now, Mr. Chairman, we would certainly make that work, but it wouldn't be enough to do everything that's being asked. That's how underfunded. And I just gave you an example. It was 371,000-mile road system, and we only funded at 25% of it.
So doubling the road budget would accomplish?
Another example, because I can give you a specific number, but in general, when I look at the deferred maintenance backlog, of over $8 billion, 5.45 billion of that is for roads, bridges, and dams. And so there's a lot of work to be done out there, and we're just not funded even to maintain the system that we have.
Looking at those charts, two of them that you saw earlier over to my right, isn't that one of the ways that we could get there is to harvest more wood?
Well, there's no bullets, silver bullets, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to help us get there.
What is it? In your testimony, you referred to green jobs, amongst other things, a list of things that there's benefits. What is a green job?
Well, I don't know that I use that very much, but a green job is one of those jobs I think is going to be working with the environment to keep it healthy and resilient.
So it was a recommendation that you put green job in your testimony, I take it? You don't have to answer that question. That's fine. We get it. What is old growth?
Well, it depends on the species in terms of how you define that. But I think in general, it's large, older trees.
Is it defined?
Yeah, it's defined by species, but it's the old, basically just for simple language, it's the older trees that we have in the forest.
So in an executive summary here that comes from both the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, it says the terms old growth forest and mature forest have not been consistently defined. Would you agree with that characterization?
Yes, I would.
Because just this past week, some constituents up in my district posed that question and to staff, and they did not have an answer similar to what you're saying here. It's not defined, correct?
I say it's defined by different species. Different species have different age classes of what's considered old growth.
But it's not defined, as it says.
Yeah, just trying to keep it simple. There's no agreed upon, I think, generally agreed upon definition other than if you look at it by species, which it varies.
So I think the Biden administration has, they came out with a land management plan direction for old growth forest conditions across the national forest system. You're familiar with that?
I am.
And the Forest Service should consider, this Forest Service is considering amending 128 land management plans, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And doing it through a single EIS?
You mean for old growth?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that consistent with the law? To amend those 128 land management plans, individual land management plans, with one EIS?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we can do that, but you got to amend all 128 plans. Right now, the one of the bigger challenges we have with old growth is there's no consistent way of how we manage old growth. And so this forest plan amendment is to come up with a framework for how we manage old growth, but also leave flexibility at the local level to make some decisions in how it's managed.
Are you familiar with the 2012 planning rule?
I used to be, but somewhat still.
Yeah, I mean, it rings a bell, right? I'm not asking you for specifics here, trying to trap you in anything like that. So here it says, among the 2012's rules purposes was to provide for a transparent, coordinated process. Whereas with what's being proposed with this old growth land management plan, it says the Forest Service's willingness is now convert its commitment to a transparent, collaborative process. Isn't there a distinction between collaboration and coordination?
I mean, I think generally, yes.
I mean, isn't coordination Isn't that identified in the law that it's a specific process in working with local municipalities?
Yeah, it's about informing and being informed.
So if 128 land management plans are done under one EIS, how are you going to coordinate with all those local municipalities?
Well, it's going to be done at the local individual forest level. You know, our approach is we basically overhaul the whole planning process within the agency. And so we have 3 planning teams across the country, one in the West, one in the Midwest, and one in the East. And these teams will be doing most of the legwork on the analysis. And a part of the issue we've had in the agency too is that, you know, you don't have the skill set at every forest to do this, and there's so much other work to be done. And so these national teams or these regional teams will take most of the brunt of the work from the forest, so they're not overly encumbered with forest plan revision.
So let's take one for example, the Schwamga-Nicolay National Forest in Wisconsin. Do you fully commit to coordinate with local units of government
Well, yeah,
when creating this new plan?
Yeah, that's an ordinary part of what we should be doing out there, Mr. Chairman.
Well, those folks are ready, willing, and able to work with you in regards to this, and I appreciate you making that commitment. And now, I'm way overboard on Wisconsin time here, so I appreciate that you would take the additional time here to be as forthright as possible. And I appreciate you taking the time this morning, Chief Moore, to set a little time aside to have a real personal discussion in regards to this stuff. We'll be doing some follow-up. We appreciate you and your staff engaging with us in regards to that, because we are interested. It is clear that you are sincere about wanting to have the best outcomes possible, and we want to work with you to be able to do that.